Welcome back for our 11th installment, moving along very nicely here. So now we're going to get into some slopes and retaining walls. Another great feature that the software allows you to do quite easily. Okay, so first off, let's start by making a layer here. In this case, we're going to want to make a couple different layers. We're going to need a slope or some grade, which we'll have, and then also our retaining wall. So they're basically two different entities. So let's make one called retaining wall. Let's add another layer called landform. That's like the label. It's pretty easy to follow. Now you notice that we have so many layers here as we keep building and constructing some things that you can go right and left to be able to click on all your layers, which we may have to do in a second. Okay, so first let's start with our retaining wall. Now we know that there's going to be a retaining wall in this backyard. It's kind of going to swoop around like this and retain about, I don't know, 18 inches of soil or so. So it's on our plan, of course, which again we planned ahead and already have. So let's go back to our plan view. Now let's use these tabs to go right on our layers. And let's go back to our plan. Show plan. Alright, here we go. So you can see this is our wall, our retaining wall that we've drawn. And this is where we know we want to place it. So let's go now back to our retaining wall layer. Now it's selected. And let's start installing it. So go up to our ribbon tab, go to building, wall. Now it's not a retaining wall yet, but retaining wall and freestanding are all going to create with this wall. It's the same thing. We'll get to that in a second. Now I'm going to make sure my point type is selected to which one I want, and I know that I have some curves in here, so I'm going to leave it on the one that's been selected. Let's start here at the end, and let's start creating this wall. Alright. Ends about right there, and right click. Alright. Now what we can do is we can turn off our plan, just so we don't have to see it anymore. And let's go back to our retaining wall layer, remember, and let's go up to perspective view and see what we did. Alright, so that was pretty easy, right? We just traced it off our plan like we've been doing all along, and that works out awesome. Okay, now with our wall selected, what we can do is change the material of it. Wall material, let's click on this icon here, and let's use a nice unilock stone here. So let's use, how about an estate wall? Granite's a pretty common color. Let's add to scene. Start by doing that. Alright, so we have our wall here. Let's add a cap real quick, because we know we like caps. Flat tile. Alright, so now there's our wall, alright, but of course there's no landform. As you can see, on the back side there's still about 1 foot 6 inches of our wall, and on the other side, okay? So now what we have to do is add our landform. Now here's where you have to pay attention. So let's go back into our plan. Alright, and let's select our landform layer. Now zoom in a little bit so we can see our entire property. Up on the ribbon tab, go to property. We have boundaries and topography, okay? Now, we're going to go through more varieties of topography in future tutorials, but for now, we're just going to use a pretty simple one called height grid. So select our height grid. Now, you can really only make a square to rectangles with this, four points, okay? So we're going to want to make this height grid go this whole backyard here, okay? Now, it's going to seem like a lot, but what's going to happen is we're going to select our wall when we're done, and we're going to cut terrace. And with that, and we'll see what happens when we do that. Okay, so let's start by placing our first point. I'm going to hold down Shift again so I get my nice square here. Go back to the end of the property. Try to make it, pretty similar dimensions. It's okay if you're off a little bit. Right click. Now you see this shaded area? That's our landform. Now let's go back into perspective view and check it out. Okay, so now don't get overwhelmed. I know it looks a bit funky, but we'll show you what to do with it. So the height grid did exactly what we thought it would do. Basically, it made this big new landform in a square or rectangle which we've created, just where we placed it. And you can see how our wall stayed the same and it kind of just dies into this landform here. Now notice that the first thing we're going to want to do is click our height grid. And now if you double click on it, you can see how there's points here. Now these points, you can select them and it turns red. Now you know you have that point. And by holding it and going up and down, you can see that the height measurement changes. So let's go up to, say, 6'1". Now you can see you've created this hill or berm, okay? So I'm just going to Control Z to go back and show a couple more things before we get started. So select the dot, it selects red. If you hit Control, you can select more than one point, okay? And up to your point details, point height, now we're at 2 feet, which is what it comes in as standard, which is a great height. Let's change that to 3 feet. You can see that all three of them changed at once, okay? So that's where you can start to create your your hillside, or basically, a slope that you were thinking of, like with the hill. Now again, I selected all three. And I'm going to, let's go up more a little bit drastic, like 7 feet. Now you can see that I have like this rolling hill, right? So these dots are now at 7 feet, points, excuse me. And now it's going back down to 2, so it's sloping down, okay? Now I'm going to Control Z, get back to where we started again. Oh, I just made my landform disappear. Hold on 1 second, let me get that back real quick. So anyway, now what we're going to do is we're going to cut our wall. And cut our wall, that's going to create our landform behind the wall. So we're going to set our base point like as 2 feet. That's fine because we know our wall is about 18 inches, so that's going to work out okay. Next thing I'm going to do is you can add points to your height grid. You can go 10 by 10 is the most you can go. So for this, I know that I want it to be 10 by around 4, okay? And you can select these as what points you would like. But basically the benefit of doing that is, as you can see, when you have more points going across, it adds more of a shelf or plateau for your landform. And the less points you have by less points, it kind of creates less of that plateau on top. Alright, now let's select our wall. So you can see that this white line outlines your wall so you don't lose it in the landform here. Now if you go to wall details, our elevation is going to be on 0, and we want it to stay right on 0. Let's turn auto elevate off, just in case you move or touch your landform, your wall won't go up and down. In fact, before we do anything, probably a good idea, well, not right now, but a good idea is to lock your landform like we went over before. We'll do that in the next few minutes. So with your wall selected here, what you want to do is cut terrace, okay? So select this tab. And now what's going to happen is, alright, see how it happened? All of our pool and our patio is back because it cut the landform. So now if you zoom in to our existing wall, you can see that it's flat in front. We have our 2-foot wall and our grade behind it, hence a retaining wall. Now, see this little lip here? That's because our wall is only 1'6" and our landform is still base height is 2 feet. Now you can do one of two things. You can make your base height go down to 1'6", which is okay, or you can also use this tool for your wall and auto wall height. Click that, and now your wall will automatically move to the height of your landform as C slopes up all around. Get rid of that lip. So now it's 2 feet tall here. You have a perfect terrace and a perfect wall. Alright, so now that we've done that, a couple more things let's try it the other way. So let's auto wall height is off now, as shown. Okay, now we have this lip again. Now let's do it the other way, just so we can get used to both ways. Now select your height grid, as I have shown here, and under base height, let's change that to 1'6". And now your base height dropped, and now it's flush with your wall again. So there's two ways of doing that, basically whichever one fits your needs. And we created ourselves a retaining wall here. So this is the wall that we wanted to create. But while we're here, let's go over a few more basic steps. So for instance, now with our wall here, we already have cut terrace, and we know that it cut the proper direction. But for future reference, if you hit flip cut direction, What we'll do is literally flip the direction of the wall. So we'll cut the landform on this side over here, like so. Now you can see that it filled back in our patio area and cut the opposite side of the wall. Let's remove that, since we know we want to cut this side of the wall and use our pool and patio. Now another thing you can do is, if you focus in on your wall here, notice the elevation is 0 because our grade is at 0 and it rises up about 2 feet. If you wanted to create some sort of terrace underneath the wall, what you can do is move the elevation up a few inches at a time. Now you can see the landform in front of the wall is coming up. Notice our patio here. Let's try that one more time. Let's go up about 3 more inches here. See how everything is rising? And there's some landform in front of our wall. And just another way to add some more detail. But of course, it's going to interfere with our pool here, which is why we cut our terrace, and we want to bring this back down to 0 inches. And by doing so, it remains flat and our pool is back to normal. To add even more detail to your landform or your property by using the height grid, you can select it like I've done and double click once more. In our point system, which we set up, which was 10 by 4, you can select an individual point or more than one like I showed you, and you can adjust the height manually. By doing so, you can create these landform like so. You can see how you can adjust that. Looks really neat, just to add more detail and some curve and some character to your property. Okay, let's end today with a nice screenshot of our retaining wall. Alright, let's add a terrain. Let's go with a medium green. Add to scene. Yeah, it looks a bit different. Okay, so let's create screenshot. I'll make sure upload to virtual property is selected. Browse. Can go to our desktop. Let's name this landform. Next, screenshot name. Remember, this is what's going to be uploaded to your virtual property. Create screenshot. And then let's log into visionscape.com to check out our shot that we've just created. Oh, we got a couple here. Alright. Alright, so, well, there's your retaining wall that you created. Looks nice. Thanks for joining me once again. Have fun with your newfound landform and retaining walls, guys. Thanks. Bye.